Hi, I'm Jasmine, and welcome to Pushing Over the Box. I'm a 13-year-old ballerina who's curious about what it really takes to dance at the highest level. Here, I ask inspiring dancers about their routines, their mindsets, and how they break boundaries. Let's go! Today, I'm going to be interviewing my first guest, Isabella LaFreniere. Isabella is a current principal dancer at New York City Ballet, and she will be telling us about all of her experiences from early training all the way to injuries and how she sees herself in 10 years. I'm very excited for this chat with someone as amazing as Isabella LaFreniere, and I hope you enjoy as much as I did. Enjoy! At what age did you start dancing? And what did your early dance training look like? Did you start at a smaller school and then transition to SAB, or what did that look like for you?
Yeah. I actually started dancing when I was really young, around 3 years old. My older sister did ballet and I wanted to be just like her. So she would come home and teach me whatever she learned in class, and I would want to follow in her footsteps. So I started really young, just with like puddle jumping, creative movement classes. And around 7 and 8 years old, I really found that I had a passion for it. I tried everything. I tried gymnastics, jazz, tap, modern classes, but ballet I really found the most enjoyment and fulfillment out of. So when I think I was 8 years old, is when I decided to stop all the other extracurriculars that I was doing and just focus on ballet. I think it helped too because I had great teachers that really supported me and told me that I was talented, and they were telling my family that they needed to nurture and support my talent. So I started in Michigan. I trained in many, many different schools. I started in Michigan, um, at Toledo Ballet. Then I went north to a small studio with Scott Heinrich and Giuseppe Canali. And then I went to South Bend, Indiana for a couple years, trained there for a year and a half with Anna Resnick and Alexei Kremnev. From there, they got jobs to be the director at Joffrey in Chicago. So I followed them to Joffrey, Chicago when I was 13. And then when I was 14, I finally moved to SAB for the winter term. So I did a whole Midwestern tour, saw all the studios in the Midwest, which was great because I got different training. I got different nuggets of information from each studio and each teacher. And I also did summer programs in the middle there too, where I went to CPYB when I was younger. I also did Chautauqua for the first time when I was 9 years old in workshop one, and then SAB when I was 12 for my first time. So I got a wealth of information during my pre-professional studies, that I think has made me into a really well-rounded dancer. I was Russian trained, Jacquetti trained, balancing trained, so I kind of got a little bit of everything, which is really nice.
Yeah, I'm going to CPIB this summer.
You are fantastic. You'll have a great time.
Really excited. What was it like auditioning for the summer intensive of SAB? Did you always know you wanted to go there, or did you just spontaneously decide to audition for everything?
I So my sister did all of the auditions before I did, so I kind of had an idea of what they were about from her. I tried SAB just spontaneously. I didn't have a huge dream or desire necessarily, but I wanted to see if I got in. I just was really trying anything and see what I liked. I think when I was younger, I always actually saw ABT as my dream company just because I knew more about them. I knew, from the brochures that they would send us, they would tour a little bit more. So I actually got to see them in Detroit, do La Bayadere and a few other ballets. My sister was a part of the La Bayadere production. So I knew more about ABT than I did New York City Ballet. So I don't think I really realized that SAB was a feeder school to New York City Ballet when I was younger. But when I did audition, I had Kay Mazo as my auditioner. It was in Chicago, and I just remember being so nervous because I did know how prestigious it was. I knew that it was one of the better schools, and so I really wanted to do my best in order to get in, which I think made me nervous. But Kay was very sweet. She gave a super challenging class, and then by the end of it, I actually got pulled aside, and she had offered me a full scholarship. So that was really exciting, and I was relieved because at least I knew well, and I didn't have to wait for the acceptance letter in the mail. I just remember being really excited. Um, afterwards for that first audition. And then I went to my summer intensive when I was 12, and I just starting to immerse myself in the balancing technique. I realized how fitting it was on my body. You know, they always tell you to dance bigger, to dance more. And I had been at that moment in time when I was 13 years old, I was Vaganova trained, and everything felt more small and constricted and very precise, where with balancing, I felt like I had more freedom. So I was really enjoying kind of digging my teeth into like this new way of moving my first summer. And that's ultimately why I decided to go to the winter term, just because I loved my first summer there so much. And I felt like that style just fit my body so much better. So yeah.
Does your sister still dance?
My sister doesn't dance anymore. No, she's my number one cheerleader though. She went to college when she was 18. She just decided that she wanted to focus on her academic studies instead of dance. But it's nice to have somebody in the family that understands the world
Yeah.
so much.
My dad tries, but he only knows plie.
Yeah, my parents knew nothing about ballet either.
Were your parents always like supportive of ballet being like a profession, or did they just think of it as like a hobby?
That's a good question. My parents, again, knew nothing about ballet, but they wanted us to try everything. I have an older sister and an older brother too. I'm the youngest. And they didn't force us to do anything. They wanted us to find each our own vocation and our own passion. I think when I was younger, I had a little bit of an edge up because my sister was 6 years older than me and was showing me everything that she learned. And I was just kind of the sponge that absorbed everything. And so when I was young, I think the teachers saw that I had this talent and this crave for more. And so they always pulled my mom or my dad aside saying like really support and foster this talent. Like this doesn't happen often. Like you need to nurture this. You need to find good teachers. You need to find good schools for her. And my mom took those conversations seriously. She knew that the teachers had my best interest at heart. And so she took their words and she made a lot of sacrifices to bring my sister and I to the best ballet schools so that we could have the best ballet training. And that meant moving the family. So we moved many times in order to get the best ballet training that we possibly could. So they were more than supportive. I think they sacrificed so much to make my dream come true. And, I couldn't have done it without them. And I'm so thankful for those years and years of support. And still to this day, they support me.
What did your education look like? Did you have to go to online school or homeschooling, or did you stay in real, like in-person school?
I always prioritized school. I really loved school. And that was another reason why I decided to go to SAB when I was 14. Um, that was a big transition year going from middle school to high school. And at the time when I was in Joffrey, they wanted me to start in a trainee program, meaning I would start early in the morning at 10 a.m. and I would go until like the late evening hours. And I knew that if I did that program, then I would have to be homeschooled and I wouldn't have time for academic school. And I always thought it was super important for me to have a strong academic foundation and a strong ballet foundation. So at that point in my pre-professional training, I wasn't ready to sacrifice my education yet. And I knew that SAB worked with the academics. So when I moved to New York City, I attended PCS Professional Children's School, which is on the Upper West Side. And I went to school in person for 4 years and I graduated. And even after I graduated, I enrolled in Fordham. And a couple years ago, let's see, 2022, I graduated with my major in economics and I minored in business and real estate. So I have my undergrad. I've contemplated the idea of going to business school, but I've always been a strong, a strong supporter of having an in-person school um, curriculum just because I think it makes you a more well-rounded person. I also think it's really important to have a plan B. Ballet is very physical. God forbid something happens to your body. It's really important to have a backup plan if this career doesn't work out. So I always had that in the back of my head too, that I didn't want to be stranded with nothing if ballet weren't to work out. So I knew that I always wanted to prioritize my academic studies as well.
Yeah. So, um, to become like a dancer, of course you have to like sacrifice stuff like school dances maybe or like events like that you really want to go to. Do you ever like regret any sacrifices you made?
No, not at all. I think it's easy to look back and say, oh, I missed my high school prom or I missed this and that. But I truly feel like I found something that I'm so incredibly passionate about. And yes, there are good days and there are bad days. It always doesn't feel like a dream. But all in all, I know that the work that I did do paid off in the long run. And I just feel so grateful to have put in the time and the effort and the work to be where I am today.
So moving along a little bit, how was like getting to New York City Ballet at first? Like, was the company like really nice and like embraced you really nicely or not? And were there any like specific figures who like really stood out to you?
The transition from SAB to New York City Ballet is a big transition. You go from a student setting where your teachers are looking after you, they're correcting you, and you're in a small class of, I mean, maximum 25 dancers. Then when you go to the company, all of a sudden you're dancing amongst a lot of these dancers that you look up to, and you're dancing in a big company class of about, I mean, 80 dancers or so. Not everyone shows up every single day for class depending on their schedule, but it's a very big, very full, very busy class. You're turning into the bar so that everyone can fit to do the combinations. No one gives corrections. You just do the combinations to warm yourself up for the day for your rehearsals, and then you have your rehearsals through the day. You'll perform, and often you won't even hear feedback after the performance. So I think those first couple years I felt a little a little lost. I didn't know if I was doing the right thing. I didn't know, I worried whether or not I would get my corps de ballet contract my first apprentice year, but I just kept putting in hard work. I also had a little bit of a tough transition going from SAB to the company because a lot of my good close friends didn't get into New York City Ballet. So I had to create a whole new friend network in the company as well. And a lot of dancers, they get in and they stay friends with the friends that they were with at SAB. And so it was hard to kind of get into a new social bubble. But I found a really good group that I was super fortunate. And they kind of embraced me, and that made my time in the company a lot better. And I mean, yeah, I wouldn't say it was an easy transition. I don't wish those years back at all. I think I've learned so much from them. And I could only learn by going through what I went through and experiencing it myself. I don't think there was any preparation. There was nothing anybody could tell me that would have necessarily made the experience different. I think I just needed to go through it and experience it myself in order to learn and grow and become the artist I am today.
Yeah. So I know you recently came back from an injury. Can you like explain what happened and how you navigated it and like got to recovery?
Yeah. Injuries are part of the game, unfortunately. We're dancing at such a high level, so many hours every single day that something's bound to happen. I had a pretty rough past year, honestly, in terms of injuries. In the spring of 2024, I had broken my foot, my right foot. And most commonly, dancers break, especially female dancers, they break like their second metatarsal. I didn't break my second metatarsal. I had a stress fracture in my cuneiform, which is your midfoot. It's a really thick bone, so it's really odd to get stress fractures there. But I recovered from that. I came back for our Saratoga season in the summer. I did Balanchine Swan Lake. And then we went to Copenhagen. I did Rubies. And then we were starting to prepare for our fall season. And I had a really exciting season coming up. I was going to debut the tall ballerina, the principal ballerina in Tchaikovsky Piano Concerto No. 2. Um, I had long, busy, full rehearsal days, and I was also rehearsing just Mozartiana. I was learning it, and the rep director wanted to make sure that I had the steps. And I was marking through Mozartiana with my partner. There was no music, so we weren't really on the same page. And it was just really a fluke thing. I got a pull. I wasn't ready to be pulled, and my shoe stayed, but my foot came out of my shoe, and it kind of bent in half like a candy cane. And I kind of heard a pop, but I wasn't sure how bad it was. I was in shock, so I went home for the rest of the day. I woke up and I couldn't walk, so I knew it was pretty bad. I got images. My first MRI just showed a lot of swelling and inflammation. They didn't know what I had torn, and how severe it was. They didn't know if it was a grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. So I went in a boot for a little while, came out of the boot, started rehabbing. My foot wasn't feeling any better. So I got an updated image like a month and a half, 2 months later. And this time it showed the severity of the injuries, the tendons and ligaments that I did injure. Um, and from there, we were able to see, okay, it looks like you need injections. So I started getting injections around the holidays. I had injured my foot in September and I started getting injections around the holidays with PRP injections that help promote healing in tendons. There's some downtime with that. You have to be back in a boot for 2 weeks and you have to slowly start ramping up. With getting those injections, I knew that winter season was almost off the docket because I wouldn't be ready to do some really challenging ballets in the winter. So that was really hard to say goodbye to a season that I was really looking forward to because there were big ballets that were going like Swan Lake and I was going to debut Odette Odile and that was really hard to sit out of. And I had to sit out of a few other ballets that I was really looking forward to. But I put my nose down and I put in a lot of hard work. I worked with Craig Salstein to get back in the studio. He helped me day in and day out. And it was, it was not a linear recovery process. It was a roller coaster of ups and downs. I didn't know if I would even make it back for spring. I was really taking it day by day. I try to put things into the perspective of what I can control and what I can't control. And the only thing I could control was the moment right here, right now. And so I would show up every day for class. I would do what I could, what my body would allow me. And I just kept putting one foot in front of the other in hopes that I would slowly make big strides. And eventually I did, and days were going by and I was starting to get better. Weeks started going by and I was starting to see more progress. And by the time the end of February, beginning of March rolled around, I started rehearsing a little bit of rep and I was feeling okay. And so I was really excited. And so I was able to notify the company that I think I would be okay for spring season. And so we started mapping out what seemed feasible after taking a year off. And yeah, I chose the ballets that I wanted to choose because a lot of them I had performed before, so I knew what I had to do. I knew what the demands on my body was. I didn't want to do anything that felt super foreign and super unknown. I wanted to visit ballets that were familiar to me. So yeah, each week I tackled a different ballet, and I was really proud with how my body persevered and pulled through, and mentally how I persevered through a really difficult year. And yeah, I learned a lot through this past year. So
And how was COVID for you?
COVID was good. There were pros and there were cons. Um, I moved out of my apartment and I put my stuff in storage during COVID because the company was shut down for an indefinite amount of time. I lived with family. And at that time I was still a student at Fordham University. And so when we didn't have a definitive return date, I wasn't really sure how to pace myself. It was starting to get really draining, as I'm sure you experienced too, to continuously be training over Zoom in your own little space. And there was a point where I just felt like I was burnt out from training in a small, tiny little square on Zoom. And I told myself, Isabella, you've taken a year off for injury and you've come back and you've come back stronger than ever. Like you can take some time off and you know how to return and you know how to return strong. So like mentally, if this isn't being productive and I wasn't feeling productive, I wasn't feeling fruitful, I was worse than I think I had ever been in regards to ballet. I was just getting so frustrated and negative, and I knew that it was time for me to take a break. So I actually became a full-time student at Fordham. I focused on my academic studies. And then when we got a return date, I started slowly building up over like several months. And then when I came back from COVID is when I got my first big opportunity, or one of my first big opportunities. I got to perform Chaconne for the first time as a corps de ballet dancer. And that was really exciting. And then from there, my career actually really started to take off. I got promoted to a soloist, and then shortly, just under a year later, I got promoted to principal. So it goes to show you that time off might feel like a setback at times, but it can also be a really good reset and refresh and reignite your passion for ballet.
Kind of adding on to that, how do you avoid getting burnt out? Like, what do you like to do outside of that?
I love spending time with my friends. I think that really grounds me. It's real. And I think COVID was my first experience of that. But what's recently actually helped me mentally is speaking to a sports psychologist. I watched a lot of Netflix documentaries. I don't know if it was over COVID or just after COVID about tennis. It's called Break Point. And then there's also a golf documentary on Netflix called Full Swing. And I was watching and I noticed that each athlete has their own sports psychologist. So in tennis, you lose a match and you're defeated. You feel like so defeated that you lost. So you speak to your sports psychologist so that you can reframe your headspace, that you can go into the next match even stronger and better than before. And I really felt like I was missing that component because sometimes as dancers, I think we're perfectionists and I think we're also constantly seeking approval from the front of the room, whether that be a coach or a teacher or the audience. And I felt myself craving this approval from everyone else except within myself. And that left me feeling confused, frustrated, angry. I would finish a show and it didn't feel like it went well, and it would ruin my entire night. And I knew that I needed help because I've trained my physical body my entire life. For several years, I've received coaching on how to dance, but I never had received coaching on how I should think when I'm in a performance or in a rehearsal. And so I sought out a sports psychologist, and it actually was so beneficial because there are certain tools that you can learn that you don't necessarily know, that your coaches aren't imparting on you and that your teachers aren't imparting on you. And one thing that we already discussed is putting things into controllables and uncontrollables. What can you control and what can't you control? And so just for an example, some of the things I can't control is the work that I put in the studio, what I do outside the studio. Can I control what people think of me in the audience? No. Can I control what the dancers are doing around me on stage? No. I can only control myself right here, right now. And so I think I was starting to get a lot of anxiety about uncontrollables, and I needed to focus back in on what can I control and what can I worry about, and don't waste energy, don't waste time, don't waste emotions on uncontrollables. And so that's one skill that's really been super beneficial. And yeah, I learned a lot of skills just over a very few short sessions that have helped me spark and reignite my passion for dance. But I think that that's been my biggest tool to prevent burnout, is going back to these skill sets that I learned from the sports psychologist and put things into perspective, because I think, yeah, our job can be very stressful and you can become anxious about things, and having certain skills to help cope and manage with those things is really important.
So, like, nowadays, like on Instagram, there's like a lot of like YGP and like competitions. Do you think
Mhm.
that the are really important to like success, or do you think that they're like a little like extra?
I don't think that they're imperative or important to success. I think I did YGP when I was 13. I just did it for 1 year. And I thought it was a really good learning experience to see other dancers my age. And if anything, I think that kind of catapulted me and inspired me to continue working and becoming better. I think competitions can be hard, and I think it's really dependent on the mental strength of each student. In ballet, I think it's very easy for dancers to compare themselves. And in a competition, that's essentially what you're doing, is comparing one dancer to another. And I think that that can be challenging for a student when they're in their pre-professional training, to go to a competition and feel like you lost when you didn't lose. So I think that there's pros and cons to competitions. I think you can see dancers that are around your age and see the talent, and you can network with other directors from companies, which I think is a great opportunity for them to get to know you and you to get to know them, and kind of have put out feelers in regards to perhaps where you might want to dance professionally. And I think they provide great summer scholarships for the older dancers. They provide scholarships to join as a trainee and apprentice. So I think that that's a huge pro to a lot of those competitions, Prix de Lausanne and YAGP. But I think the con is definitely just pegging dancers against each other. I think that that is really challenging as you're trying to grow and develop as a pre-professional artist. And if there was one piece of advice that I'd have to give, if you do a competition, or if any dancer does a competition, it's to realize that each dancer has their own gifts. And instead of trying to compare yourself to another dancer, realize what's special and what's beautiful about that dancer. But then also within yourself, you need to reflect and figure out what's special and beautiful inside you, because you probably have talents that another dancer doesn't have. And so it's really important to not just focus on what you don't have, but focus on what you do have. And yes, it's good to be realistic and understand what your strengths and weaknesses are, but it's super important to still, at the end of the day, be proud of what your strengths are too, because then if you never remember those strengths, you start to get in a cycle where everything is bad, and that's like a negative spiral, and that can be really difficult. And I think a lot of artists go through that. I went through that myself, where I was a perfectionist and I felt like everything I did was never good enough. And that's why I was miserable after my performances, because I felt like I never did a good job. And then as a result, I was never having fun. And so here I was as a principal dancer with New York City Ballet, and I was miserable after my performances. And so that's another reason why I sought out a sports psychologist, because I really knew that I needed to change my frame, my mindset, because I didn't want to walk away from this career hating it. I put so much hard work in. I wanted to walk away loving what I do and enjoying my performances, enjoying my partnerships, and enjoying the company and enjoying the repertoire, the wonderful repertoire that we have. And so, as difficult as it was to go through those really tough, challenging years, I feel like I'm starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm really feel like I've found this new love and appreciation for dance again, which is really refreshing.
Where do you see yourself in like 10 years and what do you hope to achieve?
That's such a challenging question. Well, if anything, my past has taught me that life throws you a lot of unexpected curveballs.
Mhm.
I'm a planner. I think a lot of dancers are. And I think I had my 5-year, 10-year goals set, and I still have goals, but I'm a lot more flexible and a lot more lenient with them. I think in 10 years, I'm 29 right now, so that would put me at 39. Hopefully, God willing, that my body is healthy enough that I can still dance. If not, hopefully I can use my career. I'd love to have a family one day, so I see that for myself in the future too. I love passing down the knowledge that I've gained through my years as a dancer to the younger generation. I love teaching. I love just speaking, sharing what we're doing right now. I've been toying with the idea of um, potentially starting something where I can almost consult or nurture the younger generation of artists, not necessarily just in the studio, but by talking, because I think there's so much studio work, but there's not enough support outside of the studio, because all dancers have a lot of dialogue in their head that they can't necessarily express in the studio. It's a silent art form. You don't talk back. You just constantly are receiving criticism and feedback, whether that's positive or negative. So I'd really love to support the younger generation and help them navigate those challenging times, those highs and those lows together. I don't know exactly when that will be, but that's something I hope to do down the road. Um, yeah, I don't know. There's are a few, definitely several big goals that I hope to fulfill within the next 10 years.
Yeah. How do you measure your success in ballet and what would you say is your like biggest achievement in ballet?
Success is tricky. Because success can be perceived from an outside perspective or from an internal perspective. Success for me today is, am I enjoying it? And
Yeah.
because there were so many days where I didn't enjoy it. And I know that I only have so long in this career, and I want to enjoy every moment. So for me, I had a good show if I enjoyed it. And I remember asking, when I had first gotten promoted to soloist and principal, people asking me, did you have fun? And I would kind of look at them, and I I kind of looked at them cross-eyed like, you're having fun because I'm not having fun. Um, and that was my fault. And maybe it wasn't my fault. It was just I needed to learn new skills to help me out of that kind of negative headspace. So yeah, that's my current measure of success, is if I'm enjoying myself. I feel very fortunate to be a principal dancer. It's been a dream of mine for years. So I think that sure, you could say that I've been successful because I've become a principal dancer, but I think I could also say that I would be successful if I was enjoying all of my corps de ballet work too. So that's currently how I'm measuring success. And I think that's how I will be for the rest of my career as well. greatest achievement in ballet. Definitely getting promoted to principal is my greatest achievement. But I've had the chance to learn and perform some unbelievable repertoire that I feel so fortunate. Some of the repertoire I rehearsed in the studio, but then unfortunately got injured before I got to spoke about earlier, Tchaikovsky Piano Concerto No. 2. I think like that is one of the greatest ballets. I love it so much. I just hope that it's programmed again soon so that I get a chance to dance it. I love diamonds. I love Swan Lake. I got to do Balanchine's one act Swan Lake, which I absolutely adore and love. I love the challenge of Sleeping Beauty. I got to do Aurora in that. I mean, they're just Firebird. I love Chaconne. I feel so fortunate to dance in a company where there's just such a wealth of fantastic ballets. I love the leotard ballets. I love Four Temperaments. I love Barocco. I love Saigon. Yeah, I really feel fortunate to have had a chance to dance so many wonderful ballets and still, I learn a lot. I understudy a lot of roles that I haven't had the chance to do yet. So I look forward to doing those one day as one. Yeah.
What's like one piece of advice that really helped you or changed you that you want to?
I think there might be a few because I've learned a lot through the years. I think comparison is the thief to all enjoyment. And we discussed this a little bit before. If you are constantly comparing yourself, it takes away and distracts from the work that you're doing on yourself. Again, so that goes back to controllables and uncontrollables. You can't control what another dancer has, but you can control what you work on and what you can make better. I also think letting go of people's opinions of you is the most freeing thing ever. Because again, that goes back to controllables and uncontrollables. You can't control what other people think about you. And so for you to sit in the studio and worry what they're thinking about you is a waste of energy and a waste of your mental space and a waste of your emotions, time, everything. So I think those would be the two big pieces of advice is to avoid comparison and to let go of opinions and be free of that because you know your true value. You know what you're capable of. You know your strengths and your weaknesses. You shouldn't have to guess what other people are thinking about you. You shouldn't have to guess what your teacher's thinking about you. You shouldn't have to guess what your peers are thinking about you. You should be at peace with who you are and the talents that you've been given. I think had I learned that and applied that a lot sooner, I think I would have been better off. But everyone's road is different. But I think that those would be the two biggest learning lessons.
Even at like the high level that you've achieved in ballet, do you ever still get nervous or have like thoughts of like self-doubt before going on, or are you just like excited?
Oh my gosh. Yes, I'm nervous. Even though, even though I perform so much and I've had the chance to perform so much, I still get nervous. I get excited butterflies, but I also have moments of self-doubt. And there's a few phrases that I repeat to myself now that I've worked with a sports psychologist to help calm me down. And one is actually a tennis phrase that a lot of tennis players go by, and pressure is a privilege. So it's an absolute privilege that I get to dance on stage in front of thousands of ticket holders. And so that pressure, anxiety, maybe that stress, that nervousness that I feel, that's a privilege to be in this position to feel that. So instead of pushing away those nerves and that stress, I have learned to embrace them and let it fuel my performance and make me excited for the performance and it gives me more energy for the performance. Before I used to get nervous, like, oh my God, I'm getting nervous because I'm not going to do well. And now I've reframed it where I embrace the nerves and I feel honored that I'm in a position where I get to feel this way. If you're bagging groceries at a grocery store, you're probably not going to get nervous for your job. But I feel so privileged that I get to dance on stage and get nervous for something, and I embrace that and I try to use it to my benefit. So yeah, I definitely still get nervous, but have embraced it in a much different way than I think I used to.
Last question. What do you think your biggest struggle in ballet has been, and how do you think you've overcome it?
I think being my own worst critic has been my biggest struggle. I think that comes with a lot of dancers. I think we're perfectionists and we don't like doing anything wrong. And during performances, things are bound to happen. Things will go wrong. And what makes you a professional is how you can carry yourself when something does go wrong. And so I think that that's been my biggest struggle is just how hard I've been on myself and how negative I've been to myself. And that has made a lot of performances unenjoyable. So I think, yeah, learning how to cope and manage that perfectionism and yeah, still use it and utilize that skill because it's made me a hard worker. It makes me get in the studio day in and day out and try to become better because you know, I love the hard work of it, but I have to learn how not to let it also drag me down and make me hate myself. So I think that that has been my biggest struggle in the past couple of years, especially. I think just learning how to manage perfectionism and manage negative self-talk. I would be on stage and I would be talking to myself in my head negatively. I would mess up a turn and be like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you did that." And I would get off stage and I would just be so upset with myself. And then that just made a negative spiral. And that certainly didn't help me turn the performance around to become better. Often the performance would flatline plateau or if anything, get worse. And I would still be in that really dark, negative headspace. So I think that that was definitely my biggest struggle was the mental component, the mental aspect of it. I think my brain, my mind was a roadblock to me giving a great performance and finding freedom in my performance and enjoying my performance.
Yeah, it's not really talked about, like the mental side of things. It's usually just like, oh, it's so hard. You're there like 6 hours or 7 hours every single day. But no one really talks
Yeah.
about how it's like hard on your brain too.
Yeah, it's super challenging, and we can't control what our brain thinks. We're going to have thoughts, but we can control how we respond to those thoughts. And so those thoughts, I felt like they became all consuming. And when one negative thought came in, I would just rebuttal that with another negative thought and another negative thought and another negative thought. And that's what caused this negative spiral. And that's a really difficult place to be a performing artist in front of thousands of paying patrons and be talking to yourself poorly. They don't want to see a performance where the artist isn't confident and enjoying the performance. They want to see somebody that's confident and enjoying the performance. And I wasn't in that headspace. And so, yeah, I think it's finally being addressed in our world that that's a crucial and imperative part to a well-rounded artist. And I think artists are starting to seek help and address that. And it truly helps. I can attest to that. I think it's completely reframed my whole approach to ballet, and I'm just grateful to not feel burnt out or feeling miserable in the studio. I feel happy, I feel positive, I'm excited for the day. So yeah, I really have had a major paradigm shift in regards to that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to me. It's been
Yeah, of
super
course.
inspiring to you. I can't wait to see you perform again.
Thanks, Jasmine. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure chatting with you. I hope to chat with you again soon. Enjoy
Yeah.
your summer. Bye.